So here we are. We're live on the Expat Hoops YouTube channel. One of the first times that we've been here, and it's been an interesting past 24 hours for us because a lot of you on YouTube have been very energetically commenting on our most recent upload of an analysis of the Filipino draft prospect Kai Sotto. The first video that we had, of course, it was only supposed to be a preview. And so, but when we're talking about Kai and we have Shane Lawal, he always brings the knowledge. And so it turned into this very long, very detailed breakdown of Kai. But that's not the last thing we're going to talk about with him because we intend to bring in some other of our former guests as well. But tonight, we want to I'm going to respond to a couple of your comments, talk a little bit about what this series is supposed to be. I'm Tony Budney, and I'm alongside Andy Hoverman here for this podcast. And Andy, why don't you give them the lowdown once again on how to follow us on all our social media channels?
Sure. And well, first of all, kind of what you were saying, thank you to everybody that did comment. We do like to be interactive, whether it's on YouTube or our social media. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do that to our YouTube channel. Tell your friends, like the videos, make comments, follow us on social media as well. We're at EXPATHOOPS on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have a website, expathoops.com. So there's many ways that you can find us, many ways to track us down, many ways to interact with us. So please continue to do that. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tony to kind of address some of the comments that we've gotten so far and be interactive with you, hopefully a little bit more in real time. But we've tried to get back to as many of the comments so far as we could. So Tony, take it away.
And, you know, I want to remind everybody who's viewing this too, we've got an instant premiere coming out at 8:30 Eastern time tonight. That's just in about 25 minutes, no matter where you're watching from. That's going to be right here on this channel. It's going to be another segment from that interview about Kai Sotto with Shane Lawal as well. So there's going to be additional information, including some of the stuff that you heard from last night, but some new stuff as well. So stay tuned for that after we're done here. But I want to get into what some of you loyal fans brought up with us. Many of you pointed out that Kai is actually not a lefty. He's ambidextrous. And his dominant hand is the right hand. He writes with his right hand, as he had said in an interview with his dad, apparently on local media some time ago, and he was talking about his ability with both hands. Shane, during the segment, noted that Kai often was on the opposite block that Shane was used to a lefty being on, and that actually explains a lot. So that, in terms of that point, really brings home the fact that Kai has a lot of ability with both hands and can prefer one side of the block that is right-handed dominant, so it really gives people a different look. And even when you're watching on film study, you can be pretty convinced that Kai is a lefty, even though that's not the case. One comment also said that Filipinos are happy to see those outside of their home country notice Kai and notice the league, which thank you for that. That's exactly what we're here for. We highlight international players as well as Americans who play overseas. The purpose of the podcast has always ebbed and flowed some over the years. If you listen to this pod, you'll hear me occasionally say that the podcast is about Americans who played overseas, especially in the early days, but the pod has definitely become more than that. We're internationally focused basketball podcast outside of the United States, North America, and a lot of you fans of Kai Sotto who have arrived at our humble YouTube channel and have pushed forward a lot of the enthusiasm that you have for your sport and your players there. That's a big part of the reason why. We are going to talk about a lot of other international prospects that are going to be potentially drafted this time around. A lot of mock drafts that I had seen recently, those are changing at this point every day. They had him somewhere in the low 90s, but he's a top 100 player in the world. Obviously, there are about 58 draft picks that are going to happen in a couple of weeks. So he would have to move up past a lot of players, or he would have to have a team take a chance on him and as Shane mentioned last night as well, draft and stash him to hold on to his rights for a future time.
Or
But
really, it's about fit as well. That's the other
yes,
component of it that's
exactly.
critically important.
And he's 19 years old. I mean, he has a lot of development to do physically. He has a lot of development to do in the mental aspect of the game. He's 19 years old. He's a consensus top 100 player in the world in terms of NBA prospects. That alone in itself is impressive enough. Even if he doesn't end up getting drafted this year and spending another year in international pro league. The Chet
And
Holmgren and
I
the
think
Kai comps.
I think that
So,
let's actually, sorry to interject, but one of the things I think that was interesting that is, I believe, coming out in part 2 tonight, in just about 20 minutes or so. Shane played several years in EuroLeague, which is, I mean, if somebody's not familiar with it, it's essentially the world's second best league behind the NBA. So, the NBL has made a lot of strides, but at the same time, EuroLeague is still quite up there in rivaling NBA levels. So one of the things I think that was intriguing to Shane is that, look, anything being equal, not necessarily looking at money, he would like to see how Kai would do against EuroLeague first and see how that's a gauge. And as Tony alluded to off the top, that this was very much a preview. And one of the things that Shane will be doing is he's going to get further down into Kai's videos on the international stage, see how he's done, how he was used that way, because the NBL, as I think he noted, I think it was in part 1, is a professional league. Guys are actually maybe potentially older on average than they are in the NBA, because the NBA is actually a very young league as well. So it's different fits. And also Kai is going to be doing what his coach largely asked him to be doing. It may not necessarily be 100% to his strengths. And as Shane also brings up in part 2, that's going to be airing tonight, Kai's 19. Shane is a fairly young guy, but at the same time, he's also coaching teenagers as well. And as he notes, that sometimes you can coach somebody that's young and something will go out the window when you're in a game environment, or if they're not doing things effectively in practice to the coach's satisfaction, the coach may not use them that way and may try to limit what they're doing. So I thought that was another interesting take that we'll get to hear a little bit more of in about 20 minutes as well. So,
and we had a comment on here as well from the Creative Channel from Singapore. Welcome and thank you for listening. And he points out that Kai turned 20 this month. So happy birthday to him, apparently. And it's going to be quite a birthday present if he ends up getting drafted for sure. So in terms of other prospects that we're going to bring up, Ousmane Dieng of New Zealand, he's a projected lottery pick in some drafts. Nikola Jovic is another that's projected to go in the first round. We brought up a couple of those guys. And we're going to be getting into some of that with some other players that we've had that have entertained you over the course of the past 2 years in this podcast. So stay tuned for that as well down the line. That's going to be both prior to the NBA draft, breaking down some picks, and we're going to be talking about that during the NBA draft as well. So in terms of what we're trying to do with these segments, we're just trying to bring you as much firsthand knowledge from our professional players that we've had in this podcast in the past. They're very good at breaking down video. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but we are not professional basketball players. I brought this up before. I haven't even played rec league, so I can't speak to that. They have much more knowledge in that regard, much more experience. So when they break down tape, they see things and they see it in a hurry. And they have a pretty good idea of where guys are going to go.
And this is also kind of one of the interesting things of what we're going to do. Shane is a big guy. He's played forward, lefty. Some of the other people that we're going to be bringing in, not only are they all friends in real life, which helps definitely with the banter, but also from a strictly basketball perspective. So you've got Shane, the big guy. You've got Porter Troop, who's more of a wing. He likes to shoot. He's been playing this last season in Romania. Then the last one is going to be from the point guard perspective, Jordan Watson. He's also in Romania. He's currently a little busy as his UBT Cluj team went ahead 2-1 in the Romanian finals today. All three of those guys have been past guests. They've supported our podcast. So once again, we'd be remiss if we didn't say thank you to them We always like talking to them, always like talking to all our overseas guests that we've had, our past guests. But all three of those guys, you can check out their episodes. They were some of the earlier ones. I think Shane is as early as 9. I think Porter's something like 19, and Jordan was somewhere around like the mid 30s. So definitely would encourage you to get to know who those guys are, and especially keep that in mind, because we've also taken some of these prospects and we've been very thoughtful about, okay, who's going to be breaking down who, especially if we aren't able to get their schedules all to align and all three of them break it down. So that was also why we chose Shane to do Kai, and that we're probably potentially going to be getting other takes on Kai as well from those other perspectives. But with Hugo Besson of the New Zealand Breakers this past season, but he's a French international. He's somebody that we've heard about from another past guest, V. Sanford, that we think we're probably going to be having Jordan take a really good look at. And I think we have Porter on that one as well. So we've been trying to be very careful about who we have breaking down these guys. If we can get all three of them together at once, that's certainly the best case scenario. But two of them are still playing. Shane is coaching. So time is limited. And we also recognize that the draft is coming up in about 23, 24 days. So not only are we going to be having them break down things in advance, we are going to be doing a live very similar to this, the night of the NBA draft. We're going to be hanging out. You're going to get their takes on who the NBA prospects are from what they've seen of the college game, maybe if they've gotten to see them in G League, but also the international competitions as well.
We've got a couple of Americans who have joined our viewership of the live feed from Chicago and Long Beach as well. So welcome to everyone again who has come into this live. You can watch all this later to hear back what we said before you've joined us. But we're here to sound off a little bit on yesterday's breakdown of Filipino prospect Kai Sotto, talk about a little bit of what we're going to do in the future in terms of NBA draft prospects, and how exactly we're going to break down those players as time goes forward and the NBA draft draws ever closer. Yesterday, as we said, Shane breaks down in the video why he doesn't think Chet Holmgren and Kai Sotto are really good comps for lots of reasons, despite the fact that their size is similar. As he alluded to in part one, he thought Kristaps Porzingis and Rudy Gobert were likely better comps for Kai. Chet's playing style is more of a large Kevin Durant, a guard style guy in a big body. So that's kind of why Chet Holmgren ends up as a top 5, probably top 3, probably top 2 draft pick. And also, you know, even though he's played against guys that are not necessarily professional athletes, as Shane brought up yesterday, playing against men as Kai Sotto has, he still played against top talent and shown that he is willing and able to be able to do the types of skills that he did. And again, we'll have another segment out again where Shane reflects on how Kai was used at Adelaide, so stay tuned for that as well. That'll be coming out at some point down the road. We got a lot of stuff from Shane yesterday. Like, got a shout out to Shane. Thank you for spending as much time with us as you did, and giving us as much as you were able to give us. So that's a great video. We're going to have a lot about that, not just today, as we have coming out in about 14 minutes on this channel. We'll have another segment from that if you're just joining us, and you can stick around for that as well. And at some point between now and the draft, Shane is also going to try to break down other international competitions to get a more full view of Kai Sotto's general body of work. Andy and I, before we came in here, were talking about how this draft is so center heavy. There are a lot of center prospects, all of which are different. You know, we're talking about Chet Holmgren as a completely different player than Kai Sotto, even though technically they play the same position. Technically, they are the same size individual. They're going to be used completely differently. We brought up a couple of guys yesterday in the segment with him. But with as many centers in the draft, I know Shane at one point also said maybe he should wait a year. But he's going to be in this draft and ready to go. He's already a professional player. He doesn't necessarily have to pull back and commit to another year of college, which is another advantage of being a professional athlete already.
Yeah, and the international deadline is pretty late. I think it goes up a few days before the draft. So, Kai, if he's not getting the responses that he thought he might be getting, he still has plenty of time to pull back. But again, we talked about it in the segment with Shane already. Is all it takes is one. He could be being told right now as we speak. Maybe some teams that he's worked out for that they're giving him assurances that they will take him at a certain spot. So it'll be very interesting to see if Kai stays in the draft, what kind of indications we might be getting, who might be the team that would take him. That's a good segue into our part 2 that we're going to be releasing in about 10-12 minutes. We get into some of the fits, some of the places that might be some places you might suspect would be a good fit for Kai in terms of what he can currently do now. Maybe even some things that he would have to wait another season if he was drafted. So depending on the team, Shane breaks that down a little bit too. And again, this is still very, very early in the game for Shane breaking him down. One of the things I know that when we came up with the Chet comp, Shane and I talked quite a bit off the pod. And one of the things is I know how he actually feels about Chet Holmgren as well. So that's going to be another interesting wrinkle for people to consider as well, is it's not necessarily that he is that sold on Chet Holmgren, but he's got some concerns about Chet Holmgren as well. So Shane is excellent at giving you the good or the bad, and he will tell you. And that's very much how the three of them, Jordan, Porter, and Shane, will all be interacting with us. They will tell you, I like this or I do not like this. This is what they have to work on. This is what this person does already that's elite. So another hook for you to come in, not only watch all our videos that we're going to be having in the next few weeks, but also stay in for the NBA draft when we do that live stream. That's why you're going to want to stay with us. I'm not aware of any other outlet that has a cat on it right now.
No,
thanks,
not
Tony.
like that.
Just kidding.
Not like
that. But the producer is letting us know we've got about 10 minutes left. But one of the things that we're unique in that we've got some excellent guests that are going to be breaking down some of these guys, and they actually play the game and they've been playing it on an international level. So they understand what the rule changes are, what these different leagues are like tactically, or, and how they compare to the NBA as well. So they really know the game of basketball. I think highly of their opinions. Cannot wait for everybody else to hear the rest of what they're going to be doing for these international prospects that we're going to be breaking down. And of course, NBA draft night. That's a big one. Put that one on your calendar.
For sure.
Be with us for that.
What night is that, by the way?
I think it's June 23rd. It usually is about 8 p.m. So be sure to put that on your calendar. That's
8 p.m. Eastern time for those that are international.
Fortunately enough, that's 8 a.m. Manila time.
Yes,
but
how convenient.
Yes,
breakfast and sit with us and listen and have your breakfast in the morning, whatever your morning meal is, and listen to us talk about the ongoing NBA draft.
And one thing I can say is Shane in our group chat has already told us is like, I like to see all the comments where people are already coming after me. So that's another thing that's another benefit of with the NBA draft coverage that we're going to be doing live. Shane might be able to see that and he might be able to respond to you in real time. So it's going to be a lot of fun with those three guys. Looking forward to it. Really curious to see how this draft shakes out. But before we get to that, like I said, we have a part 2 coming out in about 10 minutes or so. We're going to have another little segment where Shane answers a really interesting question that we'd seen from some of the previous Kai content, where there were some comments about how Kai was being used and some, criticism, rightly or wrongly, of how Adelaide was using him. So we're going to be having that probably in another day or so. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to try to make these things on YouTube as interactive as possible. And we're also going to be trying to, where we can, create reminders, things like that. So you're going to want to subscribe to our channel. You're going to want to be interactive with us. We certainly appreciate everybody that's, subscribed, commented so far. So again, that's another reason to stick with us and make sure this is your one-stop shop for international basketball. And now as we're getting close to a little bit more of the blending between NBA and international basketball, this is why we're still the spot for that.
Absolutely. I do want to say that as we were talking about this being a center heavy draft, looking at the most recent mock draft that I'm seeing from ESPN, there are 13 center or center forward types that are in this draft overall, including 4 or 5 that could be projected in the second round. So that that's a pretty center forward 4-ish 5-ish heavy draft, and that's not even getting into the guys that are like tweener power forward type players that are playing a little bit smaller. So again, heavy draft, heavy center draft. We'll see how it plays out for Kai as he's in the back end of the top 100 prospects in general, according to the consensus of those mock drafts that I see. Shout out to everybody who's been commenting and liking on our channel so far. A couple of more people, including one from Baltimore, which Andy and I know quite well. Got some friends up there hanging around. So that's Baltimore, Maryland, close to Washington, D.C., for those who are currently trying to find the general mid-Atlantic area of the United States on a map. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for the area around the nation's capital. Baltimore is a little bit north of there. Thank you once again for everyone for tuning in tonight. And if you're just tuning in and listening to us, again, a reminder, in about 7 minutes, we have another video breaking down some more of Kai Sotto's game and career and potential to be drafted into the NBA coming up 8:30 Eastern time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, if you're sticking with us for that.
And I will say that one of the most recent comments, can the kid make it? That's part of part one. Shane really does like him, and Shane wouldn't use the word intriguing if he didn't really like it. He does believe in him, and I think it's more of a matter of the fit. And that's actually what you're going to get in part two. And like I said, we're going to have Shane break down even further some of the videos that Kai has done internationally. So what Shane has looked at so far has been primarily been the NBL season. And as he noted, I can't remember if it was in part one or part two, that Kai wasn't used a whole lot. I think he only started 2 games, 19 appearances, something like that. And I'm sure if I'm wrong, somebody's going to let me know in the comments, but I will say, please do. So it's definitely something that he is a really interesting prospect. And I think that we will be hearing from him, whether it's this upcoming season or another one in the future. And he certainly has a bright future if he's going to stay on the international stage, whether it's back with the NBL or like Shane was kind of talking about in his video that, if I had my way and I could put him wherever I wanted to, I'd really be curious to see how he would fare in the EuroLeague for a year. So it's certainly something that we are very curious to see where he winds up. We're still another 2 or 3 weeks away from the draft, and a lot can happen. As Tony noted, close to off the top, these mock drafts are ever evolving. Also see some shout outs from Australia. See that there was a workout today with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That actually might be another good fit. I don't think that was one that came up in the segment, but
Cleveland is projected in this most recent mock draft to be interested in taking a center. Let me see exactly who this mock draft has Cleveland taking. I know it is a center that they would have at one point in one of their particular draft picks. I think it's toward the lower end. Let me see here. 1 second. They're also interested in taking Hugo Besson, so that's also worth noting as well. I don't see in this particular draft where they are taking Yannick Nzosa toward the back end of the second round with the 56th
another international
pick. Yes, indeed.
Another
so there's another guy they are interested in taking a center, and Nzosa is actually a little bit younger than Kai Sotto. He's about 18 and a half years old.
And if we're going to open it up to younger, some of the commenters actually pointed out Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, that's been something that amongst the group chat, he has popped up quite a bit. So we're going to be busy for the 2022 NBA mock draft. We might even do a little bit looking ahead towards the 2023 mock draft. But we're going to get out of here because it's about 8:26 p.m., 8:27 p.m. now, as I'm seeing, which means it's about 8:27 a.m. in Manila. And we have a preview in about 3 minutes. We really hope you all enjoy it. Like I said, comment, like, subscribe. It's also a good point to say that the Creative Channel, you were one of the first to comment. Shout out from Singapore. And we see you. Very much appreciate all the interaction that we're getting from everybody. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will be seeing you here shortly in the recorded form, but make sure you comment and follow us on social medias.
Yes, indeed. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at EXPATHOOPS. Find us in all those places. Stick around here. You'll get another video from Kai Sotto for us.